encouraging list of achievements, and one that we are more than proud of. And I say bravo to you, Commissioner, as one of the key players in these impressive improvements. Nonetheless, energy poverty, an issue that has for years been at the core of the ESC's work, has inevitably been worsened by the energy crisis. The energy burden weighs about twice as much on the poorest citizens as they spend a larger share of their budget on energy bills. Hence, the cost of living increase is significantly larger for low-income households. The International Energy Agency has estimated that gas demand from EU industries fell by 25% in the third quarter of 2022 compared to the previous year. Unfortunately, this drop has not been brought about only by efficiency gains, but rather by companies scaling back production because of high energy costs. The competitiveness of European industries is at risk, and the energy crisis is accelerating the exodus towards cheaper production locations. For the ESC, it is crystal clear that the only lasting solution to both the current energy crisis and the climate crisis lies in a rapid transition to clean energy. And that is why the committee singled out the energy transition as its key political priority at the beginning of 2022. We have been closely following and supporting the work on REPowerEU. Now, we are taking stock of the past year with our new opinion on the State of the Energy Union report of 2022. How effective were the measures taken, and how realistic are the new ambitious goals? In today's debate, we will seek to explore what can and should be done to protect EU citizens and industries from the impact of the energy crisis. The way forward for our energy policy must involve strategic energy autonomy that puts citizens and businesses at its core. I now have the pleasure of giving you and inviting you to take the floor, Madam Commissioner.
Thank you, Krista. Dear President, honourable members of the Economic and Social Committee, I am delighted to be here today to discuss the way forward for EU energy policy. Let me first thank this committee for its constructive cooperation and support on energy matters at this unprecedented time. In particular, thank you for your contributions on energy prices, low carbon transition, REPowerEU, energy security, rollout of renewables, amongst others. As the voice of organised civil society, your opinions are valuable and essential contributions to the Commission's work, and you speak for workers, entrepreneurs, consumers, small businesses and many more, and we want to hear what you have to say. And this is especially important right now because Europe is at a turning point. After a year of emergency measures, we are now moving towards longer-term strategies and structural solutions with three objectives: to strengthen our security of supply and energy sovereignty, to stay on the course to reach our 2030 energy climate targets, and to turn temporary gas savings into structural efficiency and support industrial competitiveness. And I will speak about our plans for doing so in a moment. But to understand where we are heading, we must first look back at where we have come from. And this is where I will start today. Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine not only brought the horror of war back to Europe, but it sent shockwaves through global energy markets, triggering the most serious energy crisis in a generation. And our biggest gas supplier began using energy supplies as a weapon. Soaring energy prices drove up inflation and the cost of living globally, but of course specifically here in Europe. And European consumers suffered first. And it is unprecedented that many Europeans faced the prospect of not being able to pay their next energy bill. Such monumental challenges required a strong, decisive and quick response from the EU, a response we have delivered over the course of the past year with emergency measures and the REPowerEU plan. Our first and foremost priority was to shield Europeans from the worst of the crisis. Even before the war began, in October 2021, we provided Member States with a toolbox of measures to take. And this helped to limit price increases and protect vulnerable households and businesses. And last September, we presented measures for limiting the revenue of inframarginal electricity generation and channel back the surplus to support measures for consumers. And we also put in place measures to reduce electricity demand at peak hours, especially at these hours of peak price when otherwise we needed gas-fired power plants to cover the demand. And of course, in October and December, we also decisively intervened in the gas market to enhance gas solidarity and reduce the price correction mechanism. More broadly, and looking at the overall picture, we have seen a spectacular shift in Europe's energy system over the past year through gas supply diversification, reduced demand, increased efficiency and a stronger push on renewables. And we have put an end to the EU's massive dependency on Russia. Take, for example, gas supply diversification. Since September last year, Russian gas is about 8% of all pipeline gas imported in the EU. And the first gas supplier to Europe is no longer Russia. It is now Norway. And in less than a year, we have built the infrastructure to receive LNG that is needed to replace Russian pipeline gas. 3 new terminals were opened, and 5 more will open by the end of this year. And this is a total capacity of 50 billion cubic meters. Or take the reduced gas demand. Together with Member States, we took coordinated action to reduce gas demand. And demand dropped by more than 19% between August and January this year, which helped us to save 42 billion cubic meters of natural gas. And just 2 days ago, the Commission proposed to prolong emergency legislation on measures to reduce gas demand by 15% for another 12 months. Or take energy efficiency. Only 2 weeks ago, we reached a provisional agreement to reform and strengthen the EU Energy Efficiency Directive. It sets out a very ambitious energy efficiency target for 2030 and strengthens provisions on energy efficiency financing to ramp up much-needed investment. Or take our stronger push on renewables. Last year, we generated more electricity from wind and solar than from gas. 2022 was a record year for solar energy in the EU, with 41 gigawatts of new capacity installed. And on top of that, new wind capacity rose by 15 gigawatts. 39% of our electricity now comes from renewables. And this last point on renewables gets to the core of what Repower EU is. A plan to build a clean energy system without Russian influence. Far from derailing or changing the course of our Green Deal agenda, Repower EU has propelled us faster into a decarbonised future. The time has now come to consolidate these achievements for green growth that is fair and just, and this is why, as energy prices go down, we are now moving towards structural solutions to build a European energy system that is more affordable, secure and clean long-term. And this brings me to the second part of my remarks today and my answer to your question, which way forward for EU energy policy? If I were to answer this in just one word, it would be renewables. Because this is the Commission's top energy priority. To push forward and deliver on our renewable energy objectives, there are a number of important developments in this respect. And I can't cover everything today, but I will give you an overview of some of the proposals published last week, because they give a real sense of the direction we are headed. 3 points here. First, the energy crisis has made it clear that we need an electricity market designed fit for the future decarbonised energy system. As it stands, the current framework gives too much weight and importance to short-term markets. As a result, Europeans have struggled with high bills, given electricity contracts are linked to spot prices, directly reflecting to gas price surge. This needs to change. Consumers must reap the benefits of a growing share of low-cost renewables, and our proposal to reform the electricity market design will help Europe to better prepare against any extreme volatility in the future, while also design a clean, reliable and affordable power system. And in particular, we are keen to create better conditions for investment in new renewable generation, alongside incentives for flexibility. And today, a large share of renewable generation receives support, but in ways that are expensive and not competitive. However, by requiring member states to use contracts for difference, we would incentivise more investments at lower cost for member states. And this would help stabilise the prices for producers and ensure that consumers, also SMEs and households, benefit more directly from renewables. Second, we need to grow a European ecosystem for hydrogen and deliver on our REPower EU target of creating a market of 20 million tonnes of renewable hydrogen by 2030. Renewable hydrogen will play a prominent role in the EU's future energy mix, and it will be a critical part of our efforts to decarbonise hard-to-abate sectors like steel or chemical industry. But it also helps us to store electricity and help ensure our energy security long-term. Over the past year, we have done a lot to put in place a legislative framework for producing, consuming and transporting hydrogen, and we have also put forward binding quotas for renewable hydrogen consumption in industry and transport. However, successfully scaling up our hydrogen economy will also hinge on additional investments, and this is why we published plans last Thursday to stimulate and support private sector investment in sustainable hydrogen production through a European Hydrogen Bank, and it will help to cover the cost gap between renewable hydrogen and the fossil fuels it replaces in the EU. And the sooner the production of renewable hydrogen is scaled up, the smaller the green premium is likely to be. And third and final point, while we do all this work to accelerate the deployment of renewables, there is one glaring gap which we can no longer ignore. Today, the manufacturing of clean energy technologies often happens outside Europe, and the critical raw materials needed in the supply chain for manufacturing clean energy technologies are mainly sourced outside Europe. And this leaves us vulnerable to potential supply chain disruptions, and it risks our energy security. And just as we are weaning ourselves off Russian gas, we cannot fall into the trap of replacing one dependency with another. And last week we put forward proposals on the Net Zero Industry Act and the European Critical Raw Materials Act to address these concerns. Europe is determined to lead the clean tech revolution and achieve strategic autonomy in the field of energy, and these two critical pieces of legislation will help us to exactly do that. With the Net Zero Industry Act, we will put in place the right incentives to scale up manufacturing of net zero technologies and make our net zero tech industrial base more competitive. And with the European Critical Raw Materials Act, we will diversify our sources of these materials in cooperation with reliable trade partners to ensure secure, resilient and sustainable supply chains for manufacturing clean energy technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, time to conclude. Over the past year, our Union has navigated this energy crisis with a steady hand and a clear direction. The EU Green Deal remains our growth agenda, fair and just. We have reduced our dependence on Russian gas, while at the same time making one leap after another in the deployment of renewables. And now we stand at a juncture where we must consolidate these achievements with longer-term structural solutions. I count on this committee's cooperation as we pursue this mission, and together, for sure, we can ensure a clean, secure and affordable energy system to power the European economy and society. Thank you.
Thank Thank you very much, dear Commissioner. Really a pleasure listening to you. And yes, indeed, I can commit that we will collaborate with you and cooperate with you on exactly that point. Thank you. We are now going to listen to the opinion 10791, so the state of the energy union. And the first speaker, we have three rapporteurs on this issue, and the first speaker is Martin Nowatzki. Each of you has 2 minutes. I kindly ask you to respect the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam Commissioner. As a result of the European energy crisis, the war taking place in Ukraine, and the resulting changes in geopolitics, the organization of energy supply to Europe, we are faced with downturn, inflation, destabilization. And given the difficult context, I must say that the report on the state of energy union presents rather optimistic point of view. Many objectives that were seen as too ambitious before Russia invaded Ukraine are now presented as a realistic response to the energy crisis, and this should be the cause for concern. It is good that the reaction was here, and Madam Commissioner presented it very well. We were coherent, and urgently we did respond to the situation. But in this context, I regret that the Energy Union 2022 report does not properly address the topic of Europe's strategic energy autonomy. This has been reshaped to fit the need. Of course, it is critical for now to become independent from Russian energy imports, but at the same time, as many as 8 Chinese wind turbine producers are featured in the world's top 10 suppliers. The only European producers, 2 of them, are losing market shares. It's happening right now. This is the data from 2022. China is also a global center for solar panel production, covers over 75% of the global supply. And this is what we need to take into consideration. Having the boost of a green transition, we need to look at our suppliers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Baliala.
Sì, grazie Presidente, cercherò di essere rapido e di farmi bastare 2 minuti. Innanzitutto il parere accoglie con favore le decisioni dell'Unione a seguito dell'invasione russa all'Ucraina, misure che tuttavia si sarebbero potute adottare prima. Nel parere mettiamo a centro i cittadini a livello locale, chiediamo di intervenire maggiormente sul livello locale, in quanto oggi, signor Commissario, i distributori di energia a livello nazionale non sono sufficientemente interessati allo sviluppo delle reti locali. Chiediamo inoltre alla Commissione di mettere in campo tutti gli strumenti necessari per garantire gli investimenti per l'autonomia strategica, per un'autonomia strategica reale e fattiva nel campo energetico. Le attuali risorse, signor Commissario, non sono sufficienti. Inoltre, durante la crisi energetica mettiamo in evidenza come non ci sia stato purtroppo un reale coordinamento europeo, come invece è avvenuto nel corso della pandemia. E in risposta alla situazione di crisi e alle conseguenze dell'aumento dei prezzi dell'energia per i lavoratori e per le imprese, chiediamo l'adozione di strumenti sulla base del modello SURE adottato nel corso della pandemia per supportare appunto lavoratori e imprese. Facciamo riferimento a come il Green Deal, signor Commissario, non sia ancora accompagnato da adeguate misure sociali e chiediamo di intervenire di predisporre strumenti contro possibili atti di sabotaggio alle infrastrutture energetiche e chiediamo di tenere in considerazione anche quelle che sono le possibili conseguenze sociali delle scelte che verranno fatte. E poi, signor Commissario, un'ultima cosa che mi preme ricordare: dobbiamo fare di più contro le speculazioni e contro gli abusi di mercato. Dobbiamo fare di più. È inaccettabile quello che è avvenuto e quello che ancora avviene, dove grandi gruppi energetici hanno macinato miliardi di extravori e di extraprofitti, mentre aziende a causa del caro energia sono state costrette a chiudere e lavoratori hanno perso il proprio posto di lavoro. Dobbiamo fare di più, signor Commissario. Grazie.
Thank you very much. Das letzte, aber sicher nicht das allerletzte. Lutz, bitte.
I'm sure that wasn't the last we'll hear.
Danke, Frau Vorsitzende, danke, Frau Kommissarin.
Madam President.
Kollegin Nowatzki hat schon angesprochen. Spannend ist, wenn man den Bericht liest von Seiten der Kommission, dass jetzt die Maßnahmen als gut verkauft werden, sehr zu Recht, die vor dem Einmarsch der Russen in die Ukraine als zu ambitiös und zu ehrgeizig dargestellt wurden. Ich frage mich als Umweltschützer, warum hat man das damals schon gemacht? Viele der Probleme, mit denen wir heute konfrontiert werden, wären wahrscheinlich geringer. Aber jetzt zu dem Bericht an sich. Sehr aufschlussreiche, sehr positive Zahlen, optimistische Zahlen. Doch bei der Energieunion, Frau Kommissarin, geht es weit mehr als um mathematisch oder statistisch festgelegte Ziele, was den Ausbau von erneuerbaren Energien, Energieeinsparung oder Senkung von Emissionen. Das ist ein politisches Projekt. 2015 entstanden mit ganz tollen Zielen, zum Beispiel dem Ziel Qualifizierung der europäischen Arbeitskräfte für die zukünftigen Herausforderungen, Schaffung von Vertrauen für die Investoren in der Energiewende und jetzt ganz wichtiger Punkt für uns. Wir treten, ich zitiere, wir treten vor allem ein für eine Energieunion, in deren Mittelpunkt die Bürger und Bürgerinnen stehen, die Verantwortung für die Umstellung des Energiesystems übernehmen, die neue Technologien nutzen, Energiekosten senken, aktiv am Markt teilnehmen. Wenn man dann das Papier liest der Kommission, nicht ein einziges Wort dazu. Das Wort Prosument, Bürgerenergie, Energiegenossenschaften findet man vergebens. Und Frau Kommissarin, das ist das dritte Mal, an das ich mich jetzt erinnere, dass wir darauf hinweisen und sagen, warum greifen Sie nicht auf? Die Bürger müssen dabei sein, die Bürger sind doch bereit zu investieren, wir brauchen viel Geld, aber die Voraussetzungen dafür sind noch nicht geschaffen. Und ich würde mich freuen, wenn Sie heute darauf eine Antwort geben. Vielen Dank.
I'd be very happy if you could give me an answer today. Thank you.
Thanks to all three of you. We have now general debate with the ESC members, and the first speaker is Seamus Boland, so the president of the NGO group.
Thank you very much, President. You're very welcome, Commissioner. And I am really thankful for your intervention. So first of all, I would like to say we know that the Ukraine war, as Lutz Ribe has just said, has spurred a huge investment in renewables. We also know that for Europe, renewables are the best way to end dependency. You yourself, Commissioner, tweeted recently that for the first time we are no longer dependent on Russian energy, which is a tribute to you and your work. Now the goal, and this is a very political goal, we must strive to achieve greater non-dependence on imported fuels, which frankly also leave us in a bad political space. It is also the first time we are now investing more in renewables than we have ever done before. And I think that's again a credit to the Commission and the EU in the way it's doing its work. However, last year consumption of coal surpassed 8 billion tonnes, and the International Agency predicts that the demand for coal will still remain extremely high. As Lutz Ribe has said, we need a citizens' approach. We need to involve citizens and citizens' organisations in everything we do in terms of just transition. Because in citizens' language, we have to have a respect for partnership, a respect for honest communications, and above all, a respect for communities. Without citizens' involvement, we cannot achieve the goals set out in the various international agreements. I wish you well. I thank the three colleagues for this excellent opinion, and I look forward to seeing you again at this committee and to see greater progress in the development of renewable energy.
Thank you very much. Elena Mastantuono.
Dear Madam Commissioner, we have to make sure that the energy infrastructure fits to the more decentralized, decarbonized and digitalized electricity system. Firstly, this requires huge investments, about 80 billion euros a year, and investors need a clear signal in relation to technologies needed. Unfortunately, the timeline of the electricity market reform does not deliver an immediate signal to the investors. Secondly, the upgrade of the infrastructure means costs, and consumers should know that prices will be rather high than low. We should not create any wrong expectation. Thirdly, we need a mechanism to ensure a basic level of consistency of national choices envisaged by the proposed reform. A consistent picture of how old and new market instruments will work together is missing. Last but not least, no reform should be rushed. Any change in parameters needs to be carefully assessed in line with better regulation rules. I'm referring to the short consultation and missing impact assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thomas Katnik, bitte.
Vielen Dank, Frau Vorsitzende, Frau Kommissarin. Vielen Dank für Ihre Ausführungen. Viele der von Ihnen genannten Maßnahmen haben kurzfristig gegriffen, doch jetzt geht es um mehr. Es geht darum, das Merit-Order-System, das ausgedient hat, das zu Milliarden-Übergewinnen geführt hat, außer Kraft zu setzen. Es geht darum, die Konsumentinnen und Konsumenten, aber auch die Wirtschaft zu entlasten. Und die Vorlage der Kommission reicht da ganz einfach nicht aus. Ein neues Strommarktdesign muss vielmehr die Energieversorgung als eine Grundversorgung, als eine ganz wichtige Grundlage unserer Gesellschaft, unserer Wirtschaft, des Daseinsvorsorge rechtlich verankern. Wir brauchen Versorgungssicherheit, Nachhaltigkeit und Leistbarkeit. Und das muss durch ein Energiemarktsystem entsprechend berücksichtigt und gewährleistet sein. Es geht darum, dass die Sicherstellung der Preise für die Konsumentinnen und Konsumenten anhand der Herstellungskosten sichergestellt ist. Und es geht auch darum, dass die Strommarktreform nur einen Teil darstellt. Es geht darum, wie bereits meine Vorrednerin gesagt hat, Investitionen, aber gleichzeitig auch der soziale Ausgleich, den Just Transition und auch die entsprechenden qualifizierten Arbeitskräfte zur Verfügung zu stellen.
Reskilling the workforce. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Mrs. Beiber-Miltovica.
Dear Madam Commissioner, on behalf of section responsible for transport, energy, infrastructure and information society, I can admit that green transition together with protecting citizens and enhancing EU competitiveness are the pillars of our engagement. Over the last 2 years, cost of living increased and rising energy prices have been affecting consumers, in particular low-income households, and challenging also businesses' ability to produce. The Russian aggression towards Ukraine has aggravated an already tense situation, exposing clearly the vulnerability of the EU energy system. Madam Commissioner, we acknowledge that many national markets do not have instruments for reality that exceeds short-term markets' failure. Advocating effective and efficient responses to these challenges lies at the core of 10th section work. First, we would like to keep supporting the initiatives focused on securing energy suppliers. Secondly, energy bills are still too high and energy price volatility is to be expected in the coming months and years. Therefore, we recommend that the EU, together with EU member states, adopt uniform measures in order to ensure effective solution and level playing field for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barzani.
Grazie Presidente, gentile Commissaria, vorrei riprendere una parola che lei ha usato molto nel suo intervento introduttivo, e cioè la parola investimenti. La riforma del mercato elettrico, che secondo me va nella giusta direzione, potrà andare a compimento e farlo nel più breve tempo possibile se sarà attraente non solo per gli investimenti pubblici ma anche per quelli privati. A tale proposito i PPAs sono promossi dalla Commissione e credo che sia uno strumento molto importante. È un po' un peccato che non ci sia abbastanza accento sui cosiddetti prosumers, che potrebbero consentire a imprese che appartengono allo stesso cluster industriale di condividere i rischi nell'investire per promuovere le rinnovabili e quindi di farlo prima e di farlo su scala più grande. Dovremmo fare, credo, di più per promuovere i prosumers nell'interesse di questa proposta che lei ha presentato. Grazie.
Thank you very much. Mr. Berthea.
Thank you, Commissioner, for being with us today. We very much appreciate your presence here, a strong signal of a real dialogue between the two institutions. I'm going to raise an important topic coming from the people that we are representing, knowing that the people should be at the center of the energy union. So, which will be the outcome of all these endeavors for the European citizens? How will they take advantage on the long run from the foreseen changes? Will be a fair share for them, the new design of electricity market? I'm talking about remunerating renewables and other technologies and how the consumers will benefit from lower financing costs. Will them be more protected through this action for future market shocks? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Señor Barcelo Delgado.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. Muchas gracias, Comisaria, por su visita hoy aquí.
Thank you very much.
Quiero comenzar por reconocer
I'd
el
like
éxito de la Comisión y de la Unión Europea en haber conseguido tener suministro durante este invierno pasado. No estábamos tan seguros antes. Lamentablemente, ese es el único éxito real que se le puede achacar, porque cuando la Comisión se vanagloria de que se ha reducido el consumo de gas, omite decir que la reducción sobre todo se debe a la caída de la actividad industrial. Esa es la principal parte de ahorro. Y hay que recordar hechos, y el hecho es que seguimos teniendo una diferencia enorme entre los precios de gas que pagan los consumidores, sean los ciudadanos, sean las empresas, en la Unión Europea y en Estados Unidos.